Hello and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today at this very exciting edition of In Plain Sight. It's great to have you here because what we're about to share with you really does mark a major shift in visual AI. My name is Chrissy Jameson and I'm the VP of Marketing here at Viso. I'll be your host for the session. And joining me today are our two co-founders, Gaudenz and Nico, as well as Sasha, our solution engineer, who works really closely with customers every single day. So hello to you all. Before we dive in, let me just set the scene. So visual general intelligence is here, and Viso now is the first self-serve platform built for this era. We will cover the market shift, walk you through the product, and also show you what this means for the customers who actually embrace it. We'll aim to tackle some of your questions at the end, so please do submit them on the right-hand side of your screen. Any that we are not able to get to straight away, we will follow up directly with you. So let's start off with you, Nico. Can you take us through where we are today and how visual AI is really starting to move beyond that narrow detection?
Thanks, Chrissy. I think this is one of the most exciting moments our industry has seen, because for the first time, we have visual AI that can interpret the scene the way a person would, reason about behavior and context, and what used to take months or years can now be deployed in literally minutes. This is truly revolutionary, and the potential is, of course, enormous. We are unlocking use cases that were previously impractical or simply impossible. Now, that does not mean traditional computer vision goes away. It remains highly applicable when the task is clearly defined and the system has been trained for it. That has been the foundation of our industry for years. But the challenge appears in more nuanced situations that involve behavior or context. A lot of use cases simply cannot be defined reliably through simple rules or object detection alone. Take detecting unattended objects at airports as an example. It is not enough to detect that a bag is visible. The system needs to understand whether the object is actually being attended, who it belongs to, and what the surrounding context suggests. Two people interacting could mean very different things depending on the behavior and the situation. So this is a new era for our industry. A door that has been closed for a decade or so has just been opened. Systems that understand context, reason about what they see, and get deployed in minutes without a single training cycle. It unlocks what was never possible before, and honestly, I think this is the most exciting thing I have worked on in my career.
So that makes a lot of sense. Thanks, Nico. If traditional computer vision reads the frame, we now really need something that reads the situation. What does that next step actually look like? So, Gaudenz, maybe you can take us there.
Sure. So visual general intelligence is here. And in simple terms, VGI lets you take a video or an image, describe what you want to achieve, and have the system build entire application for you. From there, you send the video into the application, and it solves highly complex tasks out of the box. It connects to your input sources and output systems. So for media, you can, for example, pull your OneDrive or Google Drive and upload videos directly from your computer. Or you could even connect to cameras directly. The entire VGI perception engine and application logic run entirely in the background. And you can customize everything by simply chatting with an agent. And the agent sets up the entire application, configures the alerts, sends the notifications through email, pushes data into your other systems, all of it. And what makes this engine different is that it's built for highly complex reasoning across any industry. There is no data collection, there is no annotation, no training for every new class or new use case. And this is the key shift. VGI goes beyond detecting objects in individual frames, where traditional computer vision reads frame one by one. VGI is able to understand situations in context. It adds reasoning to visual understanding. It takes what's possible and the time, risk, and effort to get there to a completely different level. Applications that used to take months to build, with years of iteration, can now go live in minutes. And in many cases, the system surpasses human-level perception. It can judge, estimate, qualify, or assess, without being told exactly what to look for. Take damage detection or risk assessment. You no longer need to specify every possible variation in advance, which used to be a huge limitation and rule out entire categories of use cases.
Yeah, so you mentioned that this doesn't require any annotation, any training, and that's a really big claim. Sasha, maybe I can come to you. What does that actually mean in practice?
So in practice, currently, what a lot of computer vision does is looks at objects over and over and over again. To do that, you need so many iterations of every single object. So take a forklift, for example. Forklift can drive around in different conditions, light, rain, dark, light, blazing sun. So all of those conditions you need examples for, because a forklift in blazing sun will look very different in gloomy, rainy weather. Then you also need all the angles. So you need the front, the back, the side. Anywhere a forklift can be in the frame, you need it to do a 360 for you. But not just that, you also get the occlusion. So that's already so many varieties of different examples of one object. And you need multiple varieties of each one of those. So you can imagine just how lengthy that process of collecting the data, of annotating it can become. So even just with those couple of examples, you can imagine how many iterations of just one scene you need to see in order to make object detection work reliably. So now with VGI, not only do you have large language models behind them, you also have large vision models. Common objects like forklifts, trucks, cranes, you name it, are already in there. So that means that all you need to do is, like Gaudenz mentioned, simply prompt the engine, tell it, I'm looking at an unsafe situation here. Tell me what you see. Or in fact, even, this is the setup of my warehouse or the setup of my construction site. Are there any issues that you're seeing here? And to what Gaudenz said, it may even point out issues that you yourself haven't considered. Of course, experienced auditors are still needed, but this will give you that shift that you maybe already became blind to and really point out those issues.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So, Nico, this is clearly a fundamental shift. Why is it that Viso is the company leading this moment, I guess?
At the end of 2025, we published a foundational white paper on visual general intelligence, or VGI. That paper set out a framework for defining VGI within the broader direction of artificial general intelligence, or AGI. And it also helped establish VGI as a distinct category. The market is now starting to recognize the same shift, with increasing discussion around that move from traditional computer vision to more general visual intelligence. And Viso now is basically the practical realization of that work. It is an important step and a very big milestone toward making visual intelligence accessible to literally everyone. So in that sense, this is not about following an existing trend. It is about helping define a new category and enabling computer vision for any use case. The technology and the market are now reaching the point where visual intelligence can be applied at enterprise scale.
So I love the way this is being shaped, and the framing makes absolute sense. And we've now covered the concept. So Gaudenz, do you want to introduce Viso now?
Thanks, Chrissy. What you're about to see is Viso Now. It's the first self-serve platform built for the VGI era, and it's coming very soon. What used to take a team of AI experts, various tools, months of data labeling, and custom-trained models now takes a prompt. A conversation with an agent sets up everything in the background. It's powered by VGI1, our perception engine. Viso Now lets anyone, from operations lead to innovation manager, turn visual inputs into business outcomes in minutes. There's no training on data, no sea of machine learning tools, no limits on computer vision. It's truly at or above human-level performance. And it does this by bringing three things together into one platform that until now lived in three completely separate worlds. It's visual understanding, application logic, and downstream action. See it, understand it, act on it, end to end. That's the concept. And the real story is what it feels like to use it. So rather than telling you, we'd love to show you. Sasha is an experienced solutions engineer, and she works with customers every single day. So now she'll show you how customers can use it to overcome the challenges they face in the field every single day. So over to you.
Thank you, Gaudenz. Welcome to the Viso Now homepage. To get started, simply drop your media into this box here. I've already have a pre-selected video. Then you want to describe the type of analysis you're looking for. This can be as detailed or as generic as you want it to be. You can even ask something as simple as, what can you see in this video? In this case, I'm using a generic prompt asking Viso Now to act as a health and safety auditor. I wanted to identify any potential hazards or risks, assess the severity of harm they could cause, and estimate their probability, and then provide recommendations to mitigate this. While that's being processed, let's review the video I've submitted. It's a video of a typical warehouse. You can see the pallet racks stacked high with various materials and objects. There are workers at the bottom of the video going about their day, as well as a forklift approaching from the top of the aisle and moving towards those workers. This is where I decided to cut this video. But in fact, this is footage from a real accident that occurred. I've intentionally stopped the video before the incident itself, partly because I'm not here to traumatize anyone, even though thankfully there were no serious injuries, and partly because I didn't want to give Viso Now any clues about the hazards it should be looking for. And here we go. The first thing that Viso Now does is describes what it can see. It identifies the narrow warehouse aisles, the high bay pallet racking on both sides, 2 workers in the aisle, a hand pallet truck at the bottom of the video, a forklift operating in the same aisle as the 2 workers, and some loose debris on floor near the racking. Looking at the hazards, the first one it highlights is the pedestrian forklift conflict. If you speak to anyone in health and safety industry, they'll tell you that that's one of the leading causes of serious workplace injuries, pedestrian and vehicle interactions. That's exactly what we're seeing here. The likely severity is classified as catastrophic, and when vehicles and pedestrians share the same operating space, the probability of the accident is considered likely. That's why that hazard appears at the top of the list. The next hazard identified is poor ergonomics. Whenever manual handling is involved, such as using manual pallet trucks, there's a risk of minor to moderate injuries, including strains and sprains. While the severity may be lower, the probability is much higher, as these types of injuries are extremely common in many workplaces. The next hazard relates to the debris on the floor. Viso Now has correctly identified a potential slip-trip hazard. The likely severity is moderate, but the probability is certainly realistic enough to warrant attention. Now, this one I find particularly interesting. Falling objects or racking impact. The reason I find this one so interesting is if you look at how the incident ends. Objects do fall from racking, and whilst the event does look catastrophic, I'm assured there were no serious injuries. Even without seeing the outcome, Viso Now identified the risk. It rates the probability as unlikely to possible, but still recognizes the potential severe consequences. The last hazard identified is restricted escape or egress routes. Viso Now provides the same risk metrics, assessing severity as moderate, probability as possible. It also explains why the hazard matters and provides recommendation to prevent the situation from escalating. Lastly, Viso Now provides an overall HSC assessment and recommends immediate actions. These include stopping forklift access to the aisle until all pedestrians are clear, removing floor debris, re-establishing aisle control with clear rules on who can occupy the aisle and when, and reviewing the work methods used for low-level pallet handling to reduce bending and twisting. That brings us back to the ergonomic risk identified earlier. Overall, that's not a bad assessment for roughly 60 seconds of processing time. And if we have any health and safety professionals watching, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you would evaluate this.
I mean, that's genuinely impressive. Gaudenz, before we go any further into the demo, maybe you could talk us through those foundational principles behind the product.
There are 4 cornerstones that define Viso now. First, it's self-serve. It's accessible beyond data science and machine learning teams, literally to everyone. Second, it's VTI powered. That means an engine for general visual understanding rather than narrow purpose-trained models works underneath it. Third, it is agentic computer vision. The system does not just observe, it helps you drive action. And finally, it is end-to-end, from seeing something to understanding it to taking action by triggering the right workflow or integration.
The last point is really important and quite frankly is totally revolutionary. So Sasha, maybe you can pick the demo back up and show us how Viso now turns understanding into action.
So what we've concentrated on so far is just showing how well it understands what happens in the video. The next step would be to show you the end-to-end workflow. So that includes where do your video input comes from, then the visual perception engine, so actually interpreting and analyzing that video, all the way down to the action. So are you getting notifications, or is it getting populated into an incident center or a dashboard? So that's what I'm going to show now. First things first, Viso will always guide you through creating your vision agent. This is the first question you'll be asked after video analysis is complete. As with most of the questions it asks, you'll be guided with suggested answers. You can simply select one from the list. However, I want something more generic. I want a HSC auditor for all workplaces. One thing I particularly like is that I don't need to spend time defining every possible hazard scenario. A simple objective is enough to get started. Next, firstly summarizing what it saw in the previous video and assuming that's representative of the footage it will receive. It also asks whether there are any additional descriptions I want to provide. This could be anything from a short description to an entire document. You can simply copy and paste it into the chat. For me, the information it already has is sufficient, so I'm going to go ahead and say there's nothing further I want to consider. As we continue, you can click on the suggested answers or skip them entirely, or provide your own details like I did when describing the type of application I want to create. With each answer, Viso now learns more about your organization and the process you're trying to build. So why does this matter to your operation? Maybe it's to improve compliance and auditing. What type of media will we use? In this case, we're going to use existing CCTV or IP cameras, although mobile phone footage could work just as well. How often do we want these checks to happen? Every few minutes sounds reasonable. Although for traditional audit process, a couple of checks per shift might make more sense. Now the next part is quite interesting. At this stage, it has learned all kinds of details about your organization and the type of vision agent you're looking to build. Finally, there are a couple more configuration options. It's asking me what type of process this application should follow. I'm going to choose workflow-based. Next, it's asking how media should be uploaded. I could select manual upload to a board, but I already have OneDrive connector configured. I'm connecting it to my VN input folder, and I'll show you the video stored in that in just a moment. I'd also like to receive an email whenever a video has been processed. At this point, Viso now summarizes the application it believes I'm trying to create. And here it also suggests a name, Workplace HSE Auditor. That sounds great. Let's go with that. Selecting the application name is effectively giving Viso now the go-ahead to create the vision agent. And if anything isn't quite right, I can always return to the chat and ask it to make changes. For example, I could ask it to switch from workflow process to decision process. Interestingly, before I've even opened the app, you can already see additional videos being processed. But before we look at those, let's take a quick look at what I've connected. Here's my OneDrive account and the VN input folder. Inside, I have two videos, a construction site video and an office walkthrough. As you can see, both videos have already been uploaded and are being processed. The warehouse video has now finished, so let's take a look at the results. These tags provide a quick way to understand what the system has recognized. Here we can see hazard detected, vehicle pedestrian risk, manual handling risk, and housekeeping. Based on those findings, it's definitely something that would benefit from human review. It's also generated summary similar to the one we saw earlier. Beyond the summary, we have the AI results section. Under Objects, Viso now lists everything it detected in the video. For example, there were 2 workers, 1 forklift, 2 pallet trucks, multiple pallets, and other relevant objects. Further down, we can see also the activities it identified. Workers operating pallet trucks and handling goods, a forklift traveling through the main aisle towards a pedestrian work area, and materials left on the floor near the base of racking. Now let's take a look at the other 2 videos. The first is from a construction site. Both this video and the next one are AI generated. Here we can see a worker carrying out a task that's producing a large number of sparks. What else can we spot? The AI identifies the worker wearing high visibility PPE and performing hot work, such as metal cutting, grinding with sparks visible. I would agree with that assessment. It also identifies multiple compressed gas cylinders in close proximity to the work area, which I would argue is probably the key hazard in this scene. In the background, it also detects heavy plant equipment, including excavators, a concrete mixer, and a telescopic handler, all of which appear to be stationary. And again, it provides the same level of analysis and risk assessment that we saw in the previous video. Finally, let's look at the office walkthrough. This one has been classified as medium priority issue. We can see an office worker walking through what appears to be a fire exit route. The AI identifies 3 workers in the scene, which seems accurate. More importantly, it notes that the central access route and potential emergency exit paths are significantly obstructed by loose electrical cables, open cardboard boxes, and scattered materials. I think that's a very reasonable assessment. One final feature I'd like to mention is collaboration. You have the ability to leave comments, tag colleagues, involve anyone within your organization, collaborate directly within your boards and Viso agent. This makes it easy to discuss findings, assign actions, and manage follow-up activities within the same workflow. Understanding video is just one little aspect of this, but as you can see, building an end-to-end workflow in minutes is just something that no one has been able to do before, and now they can.
I have to say the product looks fantastic as well. Nico, what does all of this actually change for businesses on the ground?
Customers today often face long deployment cycles, very high complexity, and limited scalability. Viso now shortens this time to value, and it makes it possible to establish proof of value much earlier. And like you've seen in the demo from Sasha, it gives you the proof of value almost instantly. It is particularly strong in areas that depend on context and the ability to build complete workflows within minutes. And it opens up new use cases across literally every industry. At the same time, there might still be some limitations. As of today, those include some real-time use cases or workloads that depend on highly specialized models, although that is also changing very, very quickly. In those cases, a hybrid approach can make sense. VGI can be combined with already existing tools to achieve the best of both worlds. And Viso Suite, for example, allows you to combine VGI for contextual understanding with traditional computer vision.
Yeah, that balance is actually really helpful to hear, I think. Sasha, if you had to summarize the value for customers in just a few words, what would that be?
Speed, context, simplicity. And just to expand on those three words, because they may not mean anything, I think speed is obvious, right? We just showed it how almost instantly you can get that value. Before it would take months, now it takes minutes. Context, because to what Nico mentioned before, it isn't just identifying what is happening. It is identifying how it's happening, the actions. You can't define what an action looks like, but VGI can. VGI understands the action, not just the object. So the context is the second part. And simplicity, because you saw I didn't need to code anything. You just drop it in, you talk to that agent using natural language, and you get the output that you're looking for. Speed, context, simplicity.
Perfect. And super powerful as well. Maybe you can show us some more examples.
Of course. So from my perspective, it's examples that really do rely on that context, actions, behaviors that really do their best performance in VGI. So let me show you. When I created this agent, it appeared in the list here on the left-hand side. I have 3 other agents that I'd love to review with you, just to give you an idea of what else can be done with Viso now. This one is a platform safety triage agent. I also mentioned earlier that once you create an agent, you're not locked into it. You can edit it at any time. And that's what this pink button is for. It opens a chat and allows you to make changes or refine agent behavior. For example, you may want to add that Vision Agent can ignore people in restricted areas if they're wearing the correct uniform. For this particular agent, I'm using a general rail platform safety and security monitor. But I've also given it a few specific focus areas. Unsafe behavior near the platform edge, abandoned or obstructive items, and unsupervised children. There's a reason why I'm pointing these out. Let's look at the red card and walk through one example on the board. In this video, I'd like you to pay attention to 3 things. First, we have a passenger clearly crossing the yellow safety line, unsafe behavior, something we would want to identify. Next, we have a family with a child. And finally, we have a suitcase that doesn't appear to have a clear owner. Those are exactly the things the agent has identified. It describes a train station platform with no train present. It notes that a passenger wearing a brown coat is crossing the yellow safety line. It identifies an unattended brown rolling suitcase positioned on the platform away from any apparent owner. And it also recognizes that there is a small child present who appears to be accompanied by adults. The reason this is so significant is that traditional computer vision struggles with problems like unattended luggage. Consider the person who is originally standing near the suitcase. Would you say they're close enough for the bag to be considered attended? And what about when they walk away? They're still relatively close, but we can clearly see that they're no longer paying attention to it. A few moments later, they're within a similar distance, yet they've completely turned away and moved on. That kind of context is very difficult for traditional computer vision systems to understand. Traditional system can identify a suitcase, it can identify a person, can even measure the distance between the two. What Viso now does is understand the context. We don't need to label every possible scenario or explicitly tell it to look for someone staring directly at the suitcase. It understands that the person is distracted, no longer paying attention, and has effectively walked away. The suitcase is unattended. Next, I would like to take a look at something completely different. This is a queue handling monitor. Its purpose is to classify queue footage based on how well the queue is being managed within the context of that particular venue. I've uploaded footage from several different locations, including supermarkets, hotels, and what appears to be a transport hub. And this is where the context becomes really important. At first glance, you might look at this queue and think it's too long. So why hasn't it been marked as requiring attention? Because the AI understands environment. It has identified this location as an airport or transport terminal. It recognizes 3 active service counters and estimates there are approximately 12 to 15 customers are waiting in line. It sees an organized queue and determines that the environment is likely an airport check-in or an information desk. Based on that context, its conclusion is that the queue appears to be well managed. Staffing levels appear appropriate for customer demand, the queue is orderly, and the service flow is reasonable for a transport environment. If you're waiting 15 minutes at an airport check-in desk, that's fairly normal. If you're waiting 15 minutes for a coffee, that's a very different story. Context matters. Let's compare that with this hotel lobby example. The vision agent identifies approximately 9 or 10 customers waiting in single file line, with one customer currently being served. Although the queue is orderly, it determines that the queue pressure is elevated. Only one staff member appears to be serving what looks like significant volume of arriving guests, suggesting potential understaffing or an insufficient service response. We've all experienced a situation where there's a long queue and staff seems to be available elsewhere, yet nobody opens another checkout. Wouldn't it be useful if the system could automatically notify a supervisor? That's exactly what this can do. It can send an alert when the queue length exceeds a defined threshold and recommend that additional service points be opened. You can even provide more specific operational context, such as when more than 5 people are waiting, at least 2 counters must be open. Again, it's context that makes this so powerful. The final example is an agent that monitors conveyor condition and item anomalies on the product line. Once again, I've kept the scope fairly broad, asking it to assess both the condition of the conveyor and the item moving across it. Let's look at this code. It's immediately obvious that there are product quality defects present, and that's exactly what AI has identified. The issue has been classified as a product defect and flagged for review. In this example, it's identified an unexpected object on the production line. You can clearly see a glove sitting among the products on what appears to be a baguette production line. The AI correctly recognizes it as unexpected item and marks it for review. As you can imagine, the possibilities are truly endless. Whatever visual process you need analyzed, monitored, or reviewed, it's worth giving it a try. You've seen me build agents from scratch, you've seen me upload and analyze videos, and you've seen just how quickly it can be customized for all sorts of different use cases. Keep an eye out, it's coming real soon. Make sure you're signed up to that launch list.
Brilliant. Okay, so Nico, stepping back to that kind of bigger picture for the moment, what does all of this change in the market mean? So it feels like a pretty big shift to me. So what's your view on that?
This is revolutionary without a doubt, but it does not mean existing computer vision systems need to be replaced immediately. In many cases, having traditional computer vision already in place can actually make adoption of VGI much easier and faster. It provides a foundation that teams can build on as they expand into more context-driven use cases. VGI can also unlock types of information that are difficult to access with traditional computer vision alone. The main challenge is likely to shift away from model capability and more toward system infrastructure, deployment, and scaling. And that is where viso.ai plays a critical role. The value is not only in giving customers access to VGI, it is in providing the infrastructure to operate it across the business. This is not a standalone tool for a single camera. It is a platform for managing visual intelligence across global operations with built-in security, site management, or user permissions.
Brilliant. Thanks, Nico. So in my classic way, before we close, I do want to come to each of you for a final takeaway. So maybe Gaudenz, let's start with you.
For me, the takeaway is that the gap between the idea and the working application has now been effectively closed. If you can describe it, you can build it. For decades, the question was, can we train a model to detect this? Now it's just, what do you want to understand and solve? So the hard part used to be the technology, and now it's putting it to work.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Gaudenz. Nico, what about you?
My takeaway is that this is the beginning of a new era and not just the introduction of a new product.
Perfect. Sasha, your takeaway.
I honestly think it's the speed. You can genuinely go from, I have an idea, to executed with all the notifications being sent to you almost instantly, as you have seen. So I think that's truly groundbreaking.
If you can't wait to get started, just go to the viso.ai website and submit the Viso Now form to ensure you get notifications on the launch. You can then be one of the very first to experience true VGI in action. So thank you all so much for joining us today. We truly cannot wait to see what you build. Thanks. Goodbye.